When I worked for the largest computer camp company in the world, I noticed a troubling trend. Parents would drive up with a son and a daughter in their car, and they would drop off their son for a week-long coding camp to learn JavaScript or web design, but they would drive away with their daughter still in the back seat. After seeing this happen time and time again, I began to ask myself why. And so when I asked the parents, the answer that I got was the girl didn't want to go. Not because she didn't like robots or didn't think video games were cool, but because she was afraid she would be the only girl there. And 9 out of 10 times that would have been true. So me and my friends started a charity that creates experiences that empower girls to explore science and technology. Today, hundreds of girls go through our programs every year in an environment that makes them feel comfortable and welcome, and they know that when it comes to science and technology, they belong. The point being that if you want to increase participation in an area, you have to increase representation. Last week, Matt Koebel sent out a series of tweets, and what I think he was trying to say was this D&D YouTube ecology could really benefit from more diverse perspectives. But what I think a lot of people heard was, I don't want to see more white guys doing videos. So his point stands that we could all benefit from more diversity because it's both useful and interesting, even if you could have found a less divisive and hence more helpful way of making the point. So why should we talk about diversity and inclusion? After all, some people, some ethical, morally upright people, might feel that talking about people's differences does a lot more harm than good, or that's impolite. Some people might feel that talking about diversity and inclusion brings politics into our community and sows unnecessary discord. And yet other people still might feel, people who are uncomfortable with some parts of their own identity, might not like being skylined, having the spotlight shined onto them. And I want to say that I don't think these people are chauvinists or racists or xenophobes, but I do disagree that those are reasons why we shouldn't talk about this. So I want to challenge people who might have those opinions to really hear me out on this nuanced topic that society hasn't fully come to a consensus on. My thesis is basically this. In life and in D&D, if you ignore the minority, the majority assumption becomes your default. People are weak, we are creatures of habit, we're not as intellectually rigid as we'd like to be. And so we can fall into these habits and these thought patterns of just defaulting to what we know. And that stagnation is the opposite of growth. And we want to grow and mature and become better intellectually and socially. And to do that, we need to hear from diverse perspectives, different points of view. Mike Merles told an interesting story about doing the art direction for 5th edition. When he would send out directions to the artist saying, I want a black female cleric of Ogma, or I want an Asian female sorcerer. The things he got back were a white male cleric, a white male sorcerer. What he had to do to get the results he wanted was use in-game, in-world descriptions. I want a Tarami female who's a cleric of Ogma. I want a female from the Wu Empire who is a sorceress. Using those terms is how he got the diversity that he wanted. Why? Not because these artists were racists or chauvinists, but because they just defaulted to their assumptions unless they're actively being pressed to figure out new ideas and new cultures. Everybody benefits from diversity because diversity gives us better outcomes. It gives us different ideas and voices and different perspectives, different ways of looking at things, which saves us from monolithic thinking. People's perspectives are mostly a result of their experiences, and people's experiences are mostly a result of their backgrounds. Henceforth, having different backgrounds is what's going to give us these variety of perspectives, which can lead to not only better outcomes, but also save us from our own ignorance. Matt Colville's treatment of veterans in his video he talks about his novels, some parts of it, frankly, I found pretty offensive. I don't think he's a malicious person. It's just he doesn't know. He's never heard from a variety of perspectives to help him give a greater context to way to think about these people. In terms of the game itself, we need diversity because unless we actively include other cultures, a lot of people will just default to standard generic Western fantasy land, and that gets boring. Actively seeking different cultures and ideas to put into your game makes it richer and more vibrant. All the best settings do this. More importantly, diversity matters because it's the easiest way to expand a hobby, to enable us to do what we like more. As much as I love the game, part of loving that game is acknowledging its past and its history that has not been as inclusive as it could be. For the most part, it was dominated by white men. And so we have to actively work against that stereotype. In order to expand the hobby, we have to actively pursue interest in new communities. And how do we expand the hobby into new communities? How do we increase participation? Through representation. This idea that I exist is so powerful. It gives people a landing point, something newcomers can identify with and feel like, hey, I belong. For players, it might be as simple as looking in the words and artwork in the book, the gender fluid bard, or the black female that's representing humans, and the text that says humans are a variety in all things, and that's their great virtue in the game. Or that simple line saying that your character's sexual orientation is for you to decide. In D&D, you choose to be gay. Is not adding sex to the game. It's simply acknowledging that gay people exist. That's powerful. These are things that really matter to people that a lot of folks just might take for granted. The idea that the game actively represents them, that says, hey, this place is for you, means so much. This, of course, also goes for people making D&D videos. For two reasons. One is an extrapolation to the first point. In order to expand the hobby, we need to create more DMs. And how do you create more DMs? By getting more people to do it. And how do you increase participation? By representation. We need people out there saying, hey, women, people of color, you'd be great DMs too. Come join us, the water's great. Another thing is that we need to acknowledge that looks do matter. If I wanted to be judged solely on my rhetoric or my thoughts, I would have written a blog post. If I wanted to be judged only on my oratorical skill, I would have done a podcast. But doing video acknowledges that the aesthetic and the visuals do matter. And it's important for other people to feel like they can belong. Which brings us to our last point of inclusion. Not just a person being present, but a person understanding and feeling like they matter, that their voice is heard, that their ideas and perspectives are respected. As far as the game goes, it's not enough just to say, hey, dark-skinned people exist in my world, but to include them as fully fleshed out and important characters. It's not enough to say, oh, there's no homophobia. You should include queer themes. Imagine how someone would feel if it's harder for them to find a mate. Or imagine what a transgender person might do in a D&D world. Maybe there's a shop owner who rents out girdles of masculinity and femininity. Is that pejorative? I don't really know, because I'm not hearing a lot from transgender DMs. One of the best moments in Curse of Strahd is when that order of knights tries to redeem their lost comrade. And they do it because one knight just doesn't like his boss a whole lot. It's because he is his boss's beloved. That gay theme that they just add in there adds so much depth and realism to what would otherwise be a flat scene. It's one of the few moments of levity in the whole adventure. Just a few more final thoughts before I cut this off. The first one is, I think it's really strange how people can be more comfortable playing a different species, essentially aliens like elves or dwarves, than they are playing a different gender or a different sexual orientation. And that might be because we have a lot of preconceived notations of what those things are from our real world experiences. One of the real virtues, one of the real values that we get from this game is the ability to start thinking and empathizing with folks different from us. So maybe there's something we can learn about people's experiences in the real world from the game. At the same time, it's important to acknowledge the progress that's been made. The lead rules designer and the most prominent freelancer are gay men. Half of the D&D team is women. And if you look at Critical Role, they constantly showcase a wide variety of people role-playing D&D and having fun. And this idea of D&D being only for white men doesn't really mirror my personal experience. My gaming group growing up, I was the only white man in it. I bought my starter set from a game shop run by an African-American family. And I'm constantly gaming with people who are not like me. So I do learn and hear from their perspectives and benefit from having this great diversity in my own world. But that's not the same as putting their faces out there and hearing their voices. And the other thing is, this is a bit more personal video than I normally make. And not just because of my actual side gig, but because my own sister is a streamer and a prominent member of the Magic community. And I can tell you a whole bunch of hate and nastiness that happens with her simply because she's a woman. My own brother is a trans lesbian. And so it's really important for me to create an environment and a community where they feel comfortable gaming and sharing this experience that we all like together. Because if we want to grow the hobby, if we want to be able to do what we like more often. We need to get more people involved. Okay, so that's the video, folks. Basically, it sums down to, if you want to avoid the trap of intellectual, monolithic thinking, you have to have more diversity. And diversity comes from representation, which comes from inclusion. So this was a pretty controversial subject, I acknowledge that, but we want to start a dialogue. We don't want to shut people off and mute people because we disagree with them. So as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. In my world, there is no word for bisexual. They call those people normal. It's considered exceptional to be attracted to only one gender. Straight people have to come out.